Welcome. I'm Xlight, and this is my channel. And today we're going to talk about some of the most haunting last words that people have said in a particular place. I can't get too specific because I could get dinged by YouTube, so let's use our imaginations, shall we? Before I get started, if you would please give this video a thumbs up, I would greatly appreciate it. If you are not subscribed and you would like to be, please do so and click that bell so you'll be notified when my content goes live. Also, if you are enjoying the 31 Days of Halloween, there is a thank you button down below, and that would be greatly appreciated. However, it is not essential or mandatory. So, are you ready to get started? Let's go. The first one is about John Spanklink, who decided to get a little bit poetic with his last words. And this one is a tongue twister, so bear with me. To his last breath, John Arthur Spanklink swore that he was innocent in the murder of 45-year-old Joseph Szymankiewicz in February of 1973. According to Spanklink, he had picked up Szymankiewicz hitchhiking. Then he accidentally shot him in an act of self-defense when Szymankiewicz forced him to provide acts for him. Fill in the blanks there, would you? According to prosecutors, however, Spanklink waited until Szymankiewicz was asleep. Then he shot him in the head and the back and beat him with a hatchet. So, not exactly self-defense. Spanklink then skipped town with another hitchhiker, Frank Broom, and the two were arrested for suspicion of armed robbery in California just a few days later. John Spanklink made headlines when he became the first man executed in the state of Florida after a 10-year moratorium on government-sanctioned criminal executions. His last words before being electrocuted mirrored his claims that he was only being put to death because he couldn't afford better court representation, not the fact that he was just a shite, evil person. His last words were this: "Capital punishment," he said. "Them without the capital get the punishment," which is actually true, but not when you murder somebody. Sorry. Well, sometimes even when you murder somebody. And our next one is Barbara Graham. She was a product of a time in American history when high-profile criminals were given cool nicknames like Dick Tracy villains, and hers was Bloody Babs, and it was a fascinating case. She was something of like out of an old detective novel. She was a hypnotic beauty with a willingness to kill. As is often the case, reality is a little more tragic than old-fashioned detective novels. Graham's mother was an unwed teenager when she gave birth to Graham, and she was sent to live in a reform school shortly after Barbara's birth, which left Barbara to be raised in foster homes and orphanages. But after an arrest for vagrancy as a teenager, Barbara was sent to the exact same reform school that her mother had been sent to. She was released in 1939 at the age of 16, and she immediately got married and gave birth to her first child in 1940. A couple of divorces later, and a heroin addiction, and a career in prostitution, Graham was implicated in the murder of a Burbank woman named Mabel Monahan during a botched robbery. While the evidence against her was mostly circumstantial and depended on the testimony of an accomplice who turned state witness, Graham was still sentenced to death. After she was strapped into the gas chamber, Barbara was reportedly told by a corrections officer that taking a deep breath would mean that the cyanide gas wouldn't really bother her, to which she brilliantly actually replied, "How the hell would you know?" But her last words are the ones that really stick with you, and these are them. Good people are always so sure that they are right. Aren't bad people too, though? Our next one is Sarah Good, who is famously an accused witch in Salem. The Salem witch trials were, to put it exceptionally mildly, not America's finest hour. Between February of 1692 and May of the next year, hundreds of people were accused of consorting with the devil, or causing supernatural mayhem, and overall being whatever the opposite of peanut butter is to Puritanism's righteous chocolate. Sarah Good was, unfortunately, one of the first unlucky ones to be accused. There were these two cousins in Salem named Abigail Williams and Betty Paris, young women who wound up being, if they were to be believed, two of the most bewitched and accursed human beings in history. While their peculiar behavior, let's call it that, has in recent years been attributed to everything from epilepsy to bad wheat, and even simply boredom. It was blamed on witchcraft at the time, and the two put the blame specifically on three locals: a farmer named Sarah Osborne, a slave named Tituba, and Sarah Good. These would be the first three accusations in what would go on to be the Salem witch trials, a period of history synonymous with baseless claims and harsh, pointless punishments. Sarah Good, to her credit, was having precisely zero of this. Her last recorded words before being hanged were, "I am no more a witch than you are a wizard, and if you take away my life, God will give you blood to drink." Okay. And if she was a witch, I wonder if that came true. All right, moving on. Our next one is Breaker Morant. How do we define a war crime? War, it's been said, is hell. So, by its very nature, it's a series of atrocities committed chaotically in the pursuit, theoretically, of a higher order, a safer world. It might even seem, after a cursory glance at the term war crime, that it was invented by someone who never themselves actually saw war. It isn't civil. It is mania. Or at least that's probably how Harry Breaker Morant felt when he was sentenced to die for war crimes committed during the Second Boer War. What exactly did the Australian soldier do that brought him to this end? Well, like with so many other corners of history, it kind of depends on who you ask. Some people say that he was carrying out an unwritten order from British higher-ups to take no prisoners. Others will tell you that, after Morant's friend was captured and mutilated, he went on a revenge killing spree, murdering prisoners of war. However, really, the one thing that everyone can agree on is the intensity of his last words, shouted at the firing squad. "Shoot straight, you bastards. Don't make a mess of it." And our last one for today, although there will be more later, we are going to talk about Charles Livingston. According to prosecutors, on August 10th, 1983, 21-year-old Charlie Livingston stalked the parking lot of a Houston grocery store waiting for his chance to strike. He was 4 years into a 10-year probation for the attempted murders of an ex and her boyfriend at the time. Wow. 10 years probation for the attempted murder? Okay. When Janet Caldwell left the store, witnesses say that Livingston was hiding under her van. He then reportedly climbed out, held her at gunpoint, and tried to steal her purse. In the ensuing struggle, Caldwell was shot twice in the throat. Livingston was discovered by police not far from the crime scene and later identified by witnesses in a lineup. The court case that followed was a lengthy one. Livingston claimed that he had been unlawfully identified, with police specifically dressing him in the same manner as the man who was witnessed fleeing the scene. A handful of other defenses later he was executed by lethal injection on November 21st, 1997. His final words marked a broken man. "You all brought me here to be executed, not to make a speech. That's it." And I'm sorry, I do have one more. This is G.W. Green. According to Texas law, any participant in a fatal crime, whether they pull the lethal trigger or not, could be sentenced to death. That's how G.W. Green wound up executed for a murder he didn't commit. In November of 1976, Green and 2 accomplices broke into the home of a juvenile probation officer for the county of Montgomery named John Denson in the hopes of stealing his gun collection. Brilliant idea. Denson and his family were held at gunpoint, and Denson lunged at one of the intruders, trying to take his weapon away. Denson was shot once in the struggle, then 2 more times to finish him off, by Green's co-conspirator, Joseph Stravaggi. Chillingly, Denson's wife and young daughter were also in the house, and told by Green and company to hide under a blanket during the time when Denson was shot. They later claimed that Green screamed at Stravaggi to shoot the 2 of them, but Stravaggi refused. In 1991, a stay of execution for Green was denied. Asked if he had any last words before being killed by lethal injection, he said, "Let's do it, man. Lock and load." Then, as the drugs began to take hold, he muttered, "Ain't life a bitch?" Ain't it, though? Thank you for coming to my channel, and good night.